through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever.
This House is now in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, 1st April 2020 to be deferred. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that those said minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforesaid minutes are deferred.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Petitions, papers. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Barbados International Business Promotion Corporation, Inc., Invest Barbados annual report for the financial year April 1, 2018 to March 31st, 2019.
Public notices. Private members' notices. Notices of questions. Report from select committees. First reading of bills.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the first reading of the
First reading.
To give the first reading of the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020 and the first reading of the Control of Disposable Plastics Bill 2020.
Second reading.
Question is that the aforementioned bills be read here first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers. Congratulatory or obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Oral replies to questions. Notice of motion for adjournment of the House on matter of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned be for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Mr. Speaker, order number 16 on the supplementary order paper. In the name of the Honorable Attorney General, to move the passing of a resolution to extend the public health emergency.
Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in relation to a resolution to invite the Chamber to permit the Honorable House to extend what we have described as a public health emergency in relation to COVID-19. I believe, Mr. Speaker, it is well known to the entire country what the world is facing, and indeed Barbados. A few weeks ago, we came before this chamber to declare under the Emergency Management Act, Cap 160A, that we were engaged in fighting a public health emergency. We believe that acting on the advice of the public health officials, and in particular the Ministry of Health and Wellness, that while we have done a substantial amount of work in relation to containing the virus, that we still appreciate that we are in a very fluid period at this point in time. And even while we have a number of cases, which we have, in the last couple of days, we've not had a number of positive cases, although I believe today we've had one more additional case. We don't want Barbadians to rest on their laurels and believe that all of the efforts of our health officials should now be tashed aside, and that we should rest and be complacent in how we deal with this virus. As a consequence, Mr. Speaker, it is our view that while we continue to ready our various facilities, we have Harrison's Point facility, which has already been able to receive a number of patients from the other two facilities that have been stood up, that we appreciate that while that facility is getting itself ready, that we are still receiving supplies from various territories, we are still receiving donations from various territories to ensure that we have adequate supplies on island to be able to, in the event that there's any community transmission, that as a country that we're able to fight this dreaded virus. That notwithstanding, sir, I think Barbadians have recognized how serious a crisis we are facing. I think that even though there was a lot of concern initially about the long lines at supermarkets and concerns over the systems that were employed, I think there's a general feeling now that we've seen a settling down across the country for the most part of the rush to get items from the supermarket. I think Bajans have now understood that we are not running out of food, but we appreciate that we have to take measures that are necessary at this point in time to be able to keep our population safe. This virus has presented us with a number of challenges. It has changed, the dynamics have changed repeatedly over the course of the past few weeks. We've been told that on different occasions that medical evidence has thrown up some different dynamics, and as a consequence, we have also had to respond to those challenges and the new information that has come to hand. We do not believe that we are out of the woods as yet, and I think that the advice is sound from the Ministry of Health and Wellness in relation to guiding certainly the government of Barbados and the people of Barbados to a position of safety. With that background, sir, I wish to read the resolution to you, which says as follows. Whereas by virtue of Section 28A, subsection 1 of the Emergency Management Act, Cap 160A, the Governor-General is satisfied that an emergency has arisen as a result of a person or an animal having a communicable or notifiable disease. The Governor-General may, by proclamation on the advice of the Prime Minister, after the Prime Minister has consulted or has been advised by the Chief Medical Officer, declare that a public health emergency exists. And whereas by Section 28A, subsection 2 of the said Act, a proclamation is issued under Section 28, subsection 1, and shall, unless previously revoked, remain in force for 1 month or such longer period, not exceeding 6 months, as the House of Assembly may determine, by a resolution supported by the votes of a majority of all the members of that House. And whereas the said proclamation has not been revoked and is due to expire on the 27th day of April of 2020, and whereas the House of Assembly has, by a vote of the majority of all the members thereof, determined by a resolution to extend the said proclamation, Be it resolved that the proclamation aforesaid is hereby extended until the 30th day of June of 2020. Mr. Speaker, in essence, we hope that shortly we will review at the end of the last directive number 3 that has been issued, that we will be in a position in a couple of days to be able to do a full assessment of where we are, and on the advice of public health officials, be in a position to speak to the country again with respect to that directive or any future directives that may become necessary. But again, we ask Barbadians to be mindful that the imposition of a number of these measures are not to create any additional stress or any additional burden on them, but really, as the world continues to grapple with COVID-19 and all of the dynamics of COVID-19, Barbados has not been left behind in the fight against this virus, and as such, it has made us call on all Barbadians of all walks of life to be strong in this fight and to come together to look after the most vulnerable in the society. The government of Barbados has put in place a number of measures to be able to assist persons, to provide relief through the welfare department, through the household mitigation unit. We've been trying to reach out to the persons who are most vulnerable in communities. We have been trying to put in place measures to ensure that no person is left behind. And we have continued to appeal to all Barbadians to be their brother's keeper during this crisis. If you know of someone who is elderly that requires assistance, we've asked that persons look out for them and try as much as possible to assist them as they require essential items and essential services to be able to assist them as best as possible. But throughout this period, we have to speak with one voice, Mr. Speaker, because this is not anything that is partisan in nature. It is certainly something that we have never as a country had to face, but I do feel and I continue to be assured that given the support that we've had from all sectors, our healthcare workers, or essential workers, or various supermarket owners, and certainly the persons who work on the front line in the supermarkets, the banks, the hardware stores, all of the institutions where we have allowed for relaxation. We have had tremendous cooperation from them in relation to the health protocols that we've put in place. And I think on behalf of the government, I want to again say a thank you to all of them who are engaged in the front line, the persons at the port, at the airport, everyone who has been a part, or police who have been a part of being, in whether a big way or a small way, enabling us as a government and as a country to be able to fight COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I therefore beg to move that this resolution do now pass.
Okay, to second that, sir.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin brief contribution by publicly again offering my sympathies to the relatives of those Barbadians at home and abroad who have been lost to this infection, this pandemic. I pray for God's sustaining mercies with respect to them, that they would know a sense of peace that comes of Him. Let me also take the opportunity again to express appreciation to those who valiantly serve us on the front lines of this fight, who themselves expose themselves to serious risk to protect the well-being of us, all of us Barbadians, and to protect the interests of this country. I will continue for as long as I'm permitted and as loudly as I might to champion the cause of those who serve us on the front lines, whether we're faced with this type of threat which immediately confronts us, or any other threat that portends injury to our national well-being, our social architecture, or economy. And we have called in the past for a careful look to be taken at those who serve us in these ways. It's not because they are special people, but because they're doing a special job. When you are in the front lines in security, life and limb is at risk. When you are in the front lines in the health sector, life and limb are at risk. And I believe that we need to, with loud voice as a nation, ensure that those who are serving us now in this cause are aware that we appreciate this service. The notion of hand clapping is appreciated, but as a token gesture. And I believe that when we get past this, a more tangible way always must be found to express the appreciation of this country for what these people have done for us, whether it is a one-off financial gift, if the country can afford it, and if the country can't afford it, maybe a token of appreciation in kind, maybe a period of time off from work, but somehow, beyond the clapping of hands and the making of noise and the use of words, we must find a means to tangibly express our appreciation to the hundreds who serve us in this immediate way and beyond this immediate moment. I would like to take the opportunity again to urge Barbadians to listen to the voice of reason, to take the lead as signaled by the government of the day, which we imagine and presume follows the advice of the medical and security professionals. I again entreat Barbadians to take this matter as seriously as it obviously is and follow the protocols as outlined repeatedly. We've had some hiccups and some issues trying to implement some of the regimes and the protocols. That will always happen in any given situation, especially one of this urgency and of this magnitude. We expect those who lead us to bring sober judgment to the cause and to the table and to the situation. We rely on their professionalism to get us through this. And so I urge Barbadians to do that which is asked of them, to ensure that each of us stays safe and that each of us contributes in his or her own way to a resolution of this problem in the shortest possible time. I support, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear, the move to extend this period of public health emergency from the perspective that we're dealing with a very fluid situation, the presence of an infection, a virus which is not fully understood, the spread of which has been rapid and global and has now impacted us here, both in terms of those who are infected and those who have already lost their lives. The impact beyond infection and loss of life is tremendous right across the country, resulting in dislocation and loss of job and loss of employment and all of that. So I support the extension of this period of emergency. I think under the legislation, government could have opted to go for a longer period of time. I think the law does provide for a period of 6 months. Once the Parliament does approve that by majority vote of its members, I am happy to see that government has not gone for the longer period, but has gone for simply a matter of 7-8 weeks. And that is understood in terms of the fluidity of the situation and the nature of the threat. We have, though, observed over time governments farther afield have used instances of states of emergency, public health emergency, and other forms of emergency cover to extend its life, to implement measures which otherwise perhaps would not find the approval of the public and perhaps otherwise would not find the consent of parliaments. I would just want to advise and encourage this government not to be so disposed as to use the cover of COVID as to attempt to be the type of administration that in the darkness of this hour implements measures or put in place strictures which would not under normal circumstances find concordance from the public of Barbados. And so I advise very strongly that government not use this COVID threat as cover for any such enterprise. This government is also in a position to use the power of numbers, if it is so disposed, to achieve such nefarious ends. And I would want to counsel against that. I want to be very clear that I'm not charging the government with that. I want to be very clear that I'm supporting the measure before us. But I'm simply saying, from my limited experience on this earth, my appreciation for political history, there have been many instances, and some ongoing right now, where governments would have used the power of numbers and the cover of state of emergency to engage in policy positions and other positions which otherwise people would not give consent and give approval. Government should ensure, as is indicated by the move for only 8 weeks or so, government should ensure that there is a continuing signal from its benches that it appreciates the significance of the institution of Parliament. The institution of Parliament, the highest lawmaking body in the land. It is not the cabinet of Barbados, it is the Parliament of Barbados. The situation with which we are faced legislatively now puts some inordinate powers in the bosom or hands of the cabinet. But it should never be lost sight of that the highest lawmaking body, policy-making body in Barbados is the Parliament of Barbados. And therefore nothing should be done that suggests that we're trifling with this institution. And though we are not perhaps met as often as we are usually wont to do, which is traditionally weekly, I would want to very strongly urge government to make sure that the signal is not picked up by Barbadians, that we want to trifle with the Parliament, or that we want to use the immediate threat of COVID to cover any misdeeds which may be uncomfortable to the palates of Barbadians. In saying all of that, I support the measure. Thank you.
Honorable Member for the City of Bridgetown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I do not intend to speak for a long period of time because obviously there's a lot of work to be done, but I really felt that I needed to say something in support of the extension of the emergency as we are here to do this morning and to debate. And I do so because one of the things that I would like to say up front to all persons in the chamber and those who are listening outside of the chamber, that this is not something that those persons who are in public health, and especially those who are on the front line, would wish to do because perhaps the authorities there is there to do it. Because I can say to you that those on the front line, I have people who are involved in contact tracing, and they are doing it from early in the morning to late in the evening, and they get very little time to spend with their family and loved ones. I say that because even though there are restrictions, the restrictions do impact on the lives of those who are working in the front line. Because even during those hours that are made available for them to do their shopping at the supermarket, there are quite a few of them who are unable to take advantage of that because they are out on the front line. So it is impacting on them as well, but they do it. And they do it because they recognize the importance of us being able to do what we are doing. If we have a lockdown on its own, and I've said this elsewhere before, will not help us to get out of this situation. It will facilitate the process of us getting out of this situation, but on its own it does not. It is vitally important, and the public health imperative in terms of what is happening now is to give public health officers the opportunity to make contact with as many people as possible who, through the contact tracing program, would have come into contact with a confirmed case. And this is the importance of it, because the faster we are able to reach those persons, and the more of those persons we are able to reach, the better we will be able to contain the spread of the virus and therefore properly and adequately manage the public health emergency. And this is a very, very vital part of this entire exercise. And just to simplify it and how complex and how complicated it is, if you take a confirmed case as the trunk of a tree, those contacts that we are looking for become the branches. But if one of those branches then become infected, that creates other branches and it spreads, and that is how it is, and it makes it even more difficult to be able to cover and to trace and to adequately service all of those contacts. And that is why in some countries, especially larger countries, and I know people follow CNN and other news media, it is very complex and complicated for them, and it requires a large number of persons given the spread of the virus. What we are trying to do here in Barbados is not to, or to fight desperately for us not to reach that stage where this thing becomes unmanageable. And that is why we have to do it now. And we have to take these measures now. We believe, and with some degree of certainty when they say that, because obviously things can change and we are not absolutely sure as to where we are in terms of a spread, and we're doing everything to find out. But the evidence, the available evidence suggests that we do not have that spread. And we are trying all kinds of things to do so by testing, contact tracing, and also utilizing our polyclinics and other private health institutions to be able to determine if there's been a spike in respiratory cases throughout the system. These are non-COVID related or normal influenza cases and so on. So we are trying all sorts of things, and we say that we're going to be ramping up the testing. But it is very important for us to do so, because we firmly believe that if we are able to continue on the current trajectory and we are able to manage this thing now, that we may be able to get out of the worst of it much quicker than might have previously been anticipated, as long as we can do this now. This is what we are hoping for.